everybody, Cinema Sickness here with this week's weekly review, where we take a look at all the movies I watched throughout the week, and I give you my quick thoughts on them. So let's take a look at everything I watched. The first title I watched this week was Dummy. Your very typical indie film about a character, or in this case a few characters, getting to know themselves. It's nothing we haven't seen before. But with that being said, it's not that this is a bad film. This is a great film. Very funny, great characters. Adrien Brody is fantastic in it. He plays this socially awkward character who ends up really getting into ventriloquism and ends up carrying around this dummy with him all the time. But what I end up loving most is he sort of lives like another character through his dummy, where he's very socially awkward and isn't quite all there, sort of. But his dummy, he's making this thing say pretty much everything I guess he's really thinking. Things against his family, his friends, even stuff against himself. He's just this very kind of snarky, kind of like somewhat, not quite a dick, but somewhat of a dick dummy who just says these things. Again, I think that Adrien Brody's character is really thinking, and I end up really liking the dummy. The dummy's probably my favorite character in this whole movie. The stuff that comes out of his mouth is hilarious. I was cracking up laughing every time Adrien Brody was talking to his dummy and having his dummy talk back to him. Just great, great dialogue. They could have put on a fantastic show. It is great. And there's even parts where Adrien Brody, he's screwing stuff up. I mean, there's this routine, and Adrien Brody messes it up. And, again, because he's kind of socially awkward and he's really nervous when he's performing. And he has the dummy character talking back to him, and this isn't a routine they set up. He's screwing up the routine, but the dummy's just going at him and just like calling him a loser and stuff, and it's really, really funny. So I definitely recommend checking this one out. Although it's nothing amazing, I'd say if you can pick it up for a good price, it's certainly worth about $5. I mean, I paid $3 for it, which was definitely worth the $3. But if you can pick it up for $5 or something, which I'm sure you can find some pretty cheap nowadays. It is worth grabbing. It is worth seeing. Very funny. Also comes with some pretty cool special features. If you're a fan of Jeff Dunham's name, right? Yeah, if you're a fan of Jeff Dunham, you're going to want to watch the special features on here. There's some special features that just he does alone that are pretty funny. So, Dummy, I'd recommend it. The second title I watched this week was My Soul to Take. And I'm sure by now you've heard many, many, many bad things about this movie. Just one negative review after another. And every single one of those negative reviews is deserved. This was garbage. Now, I went into it hearing all these reviews, but I thought, could it really be that bad? I've seen other movies that people just tear apart, and they're not great movies, but I end up enjoying them to some extent, or, something about them I like. There is nothing good about this film. It was told horribly, the characters were a mess, just the entire story was just such a complete mess of a story. About 5 minutes in the movie, my wife and I turned to each other because she was watching it with me, and we're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is this happening? And who cares? And oh, that acting's so bad, and just one bad thing after another. So there's nothing redeemable about this movie whatsoever. I have nothing positive to say about it. I'm glad I only paid, I think I paid like $4 for this Blu-ray. Very happy that's all I paid. Had I paid a cent more, I'd have been pretty upset. So I would say stay far, far away from this complete mess of a wannabe horror slasher film. It's bad. It's just awful. So again, nothing redeemable. Don't watch this one. The third title I watched this week was Child Star, the Shirley Temple movie. Now this was great. I loved learning all about Shirley Temple. At first, I thought the only negative thing about this was the fact that it basically talks about her, kind of her as a kid. And then once she becomes a teenager, it talks a little bit, but not much, and then the movie ends. I thought, well, I really want to know what happens to her. I want to know about the rest of her life and everything like that. And then I read the name of the movie again. I go, oh, Child Star, the Shirley Temple movie. So really, this is just about her as a kid and her rise to fame and how she became famous and all the movies she was in and the whole fiasco with her, how she was going to be in The Wizard of Oz, and things kind of fell through, which is really shady, and a whole dickhead move on, I guess it was Fox who owned her at the time. Just a really, really dickhead move on their part, and she wanted nothing more to be in this movie, and they screwed her out of it. You learn a whole lot about Shirley Temple. How much is real, how much is made up? It's a movie, you never know, but really well done. And if you're into Shirley Temple at all, this is certainly one worth checking out. Like I said, it does end up with her, right around her like very early teenage years. I think she's in. I don't think she's in college at the time. I think she's in high school, and she's been out of the movie scene for a little while. Then she gets offered a part and does it, and then the movie pretty much ends there, which did kind of leave me hanging because I really would have loved to have known more about the rest of her life. I actually ended up going on Wikipedia, learning more about her because I was really interested. But really wish they would do like a sequel to this and tell you all about the later years of her life. I really would have loved to have seen that. But regardless, this is a really good watch. Great drama, great biography film. If you were into Shirley Temple at all, this is one to check out. The fourth title I watched this week was The Cure. Now this I had to check out immediately because a lot of you guys said it was really, really good, and it's definitely something I needed to see. And I loved it. Thought it was a really good watch. Though I was a little disappointed in the fact that at no part of this movie did I get choked up. Usually in movies like this, these feel-good movies like where nice things are supposed to be happening and stuff, there are moments when I'll get really choked up. What gets me in a movie is kind of people helping people. That's sort of really, that's what will get me choked up in a movie. And I expected a ton of that out of this movie, and I didn't get it. There wasn't any part where I was, again, choked up. But it was an enjoyable story about this boy who has AIDS. He got it through, I think, a blood transfusion, and the whole town's basically being a complete dick. They're calling him gay and stuff like that because they just assume that, well, a kid who has AIDS must be gay because only gay people can get AIDS. The kid next door, he thinks the same thing, but then he ends up befriending him, and they become these great friends. They go on adventures, and a lot of crazy things happen, but it ends up being this great story about these two kids who become really, really good friends, and the kid who has AIDS, who, spoiler alert here, does die in the end. Just the fact that he hasn't really had any friends his whole life and ends up having this really, really, really good friend right before he dies, so at least he got to die with a best friend. So a really, really good story, very touching. Like I said, there wasn't any moments that got me choked up, but that's not to say it was bad. It was still a great watch and definitely worth checking out. You can get it right now for $3 at Big Lots, and I'd say pick it up. The fifth title I watched this week was Safety Not Guaranteed. This seems to get some mixed reviews. When I actually posted that I was watching this on Instagram, a lot of you guys either said it was great, you loved it, or you hated it or expecting more. Honestly, I was expecting a bit more, but I still loved the film. Thought it was very funny, very interesting. It's all about kind of people sort of falling in love and just this really interesting story that, again, has kind of that indie feel to it, but very well done. And although I was expecting, like I said, a little bit more, I was expecting a little bit more kind of wackiness and craziness at times, and I didn't really get that, but it was still a good watch and definitely had its wacky and crazy moments. I actually really enjoyed the ending, and I kind of didn't see it coming. I thought maybe it was going to go in a different direction, but it ended up going in the direction that the movie is kind of leaning up to things kind of going one way, but you just sort of assume, okay, it's not going to go that way. They're gonna start headed that way and then veer off at some point. But no, it goes kind of the way you think it's going to go. So a good watch. I'd recommend it. Don't know what all the hate was about. Like I said, it seems to be about a 50-50. The kind of like love, you love it or hate it sort of relationship people have with this movie, but I liked it, and I'd recommend it. The sixth title I watched this week was Clay Pigeons. This was absolutely fantastic. Just balls to the wall awesome from start to finish. I had no idea what this movie was going into it. I didn't read the synopsis, didn't look up any reviews. All I knew is it had Vince Vaughn, Janeane Garofalo, and Joaquin Phoenix in it. Thought that sounded like a really good lineup, so I was interested in checking it out. And it was just such a fantastic kind of dark comedy, just brilliant. All about Joaquin Phoenix's character and how he gets mixed up in all these murders. They start out kind of being murders from his girlfriend at the time, and then they lead into these murders from Vince Vaughn's character, who ends up being a serial killer, and Joaquin Phoenix is getting blamed for his murders, and Vince Vaughn's just fucking with him the whole time and setting him up and screwing with him. He's this horrible, nasty character who at first you kind of like. You think he's just kind of this cool sort of hillbilly character. It's a little weird, but seems like a nice guy. Then you learn out he's just a complete fucking nutcase going around killing all these women. Just excellent. This is one of the best movies I've seen in a while. I cannot recommend this movie enough. If you like dark comedies, if you like just twisted movies, if you want to see Vince Vaughn just be a badass serial killer, more so than perhaps in Psycho, this is definitely one to see. Can't recommend it enough. If you come across it, this is something you have to add to your collection and check out immediately. The seventh title I watched this week was Piranha Double D. This was alright. I actually enjoyed the first Piranha movie. It was, it was cheesy, it was ridiculous, but it was fun in just one of those so bad it's good kind of ways, and you could pretty much see a sequel was coming as the movie had become somewhat of a cult hit. Unfortunately, this wasn't as good. It wasn't as... I mean, the first movie, again, had that so bad it's good sort of thing going on with it. This movie was just sort of bad, but it's still... it was still a bit redeeming. It wasn't so bad that I just like, no, don't see this movie. It was just not as good as... See, I have a hard time saying good when I describe the first movie, but it wasn't. It wasn't as good. It was just okay, an alright sequel. Had some funny moments. I'd say the funniest moments in this movie were things that were just unexpected. Things like, for instance, a kid getting his head lopped off. Things you just kind of didn't see coming. Parts of the movie where you're like, okay, something funny is going to happen here. And then, oh, geez, the kid just got his head knocked off. Like, alright, didn't see that one coming. Things like that. Scenes with a guy getting his head lopped off. Just lots and lots of things you just kind of don't see coming. Those are the funniest moments. But all in all, just okay. If you like the first one, you can get this for cheap. I'd say, yeah, maybe check it out. But again, not as that's the way I say it. Not as enjoyable as the first one. That's a good way to describe it. I don't want to say as good. I don't like using the word good when talking about the Piranha movies, but not as enjoyable and not as much fun, I personally thought. Also, the movie's only 70 minutes long. I think the last 15, 20 minutes of this movie is all just outtakes. I thought I was like, why would you fill the last almost half-hour movie with just outtakes and nothing else? That seemed a little cheap as well. I guess whoever made this movie went, oh shit, this movie was only 70 minutes long. That's not very long at all. Quick, throw in a boatload of outtakes. Just seemed kind of ridiculous. But all in all, it was just alright. I can't really necessarily recommend it. I would just say if you like the first one and you're interested in seeing it, sure, check it out. They do set the movie up for a third. Will there be a third? I could see that probably happening. Could be interesting. The piranhas are now walking, so interested to see how that turns out. I almost kind of sort of hope there is a third movie. I kind of want to see where the walking piranha story is going to go. But again, all in all, it was just alright. The 8th title I watched this week was Cheers Season 9. Finished this one up this week. And although I still think this is a very strong show, very well done, very, very enjoyable, I'm a huge, huge fan of Cheers, I would say as the seasons are going on, they're not as good. It seems that every season that passes is just not as good as the season before. The first couple seasons were absolutely fantastic. The cliffhangers were great. Every episode made me want to see what's going to happen next. I love the story of Diane and Sam. It was a lot of fun. And then again, as the seasons kind of went on, it just sort of went a little bit downhill. Now, I'm not saying it completely dropped off, just a slight slope, a slight downhill grade, I would say. This because the show is still strong. It's just becoming a bit more repetitive. All the episodes sort of seem somewhat alike. Nothing really crazy's happening. In this season, Rebecca and Sam end up deciding to have a baby at the end, which leads us into the next season, which I guess was a decent cliffhanger. I am kind of interested to see where that's going to go, but it wasn't anything amazing. It was kind of like, all right, they're going to have a kid. That's interesting. They're not dating or anything. They're not married. They just both want to have a baby, and they say, well, let's do it. So I am curious to see where that goes. So all in all, an okay season. I should say okay. It's an enjoyable season. It's a great season. I love Cheers. I'm a big fan. I haven't watched an episode yet that I didn't like. I just think these episodes aren't quite as strong as the original episodes, but still, it's good, and I'd recommend checking it out. The 9th title I watched this week was The Love Letter. And this I just could not get behind. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from this, but I really wanted to watch my VHS tape because I did just recently come across the DVD, and I was going to pick it up, but I thought, maybe I should check this one out first before I re-buy it and then end up not liking it. And I'm glad I did because I really didn't care much for this movie. It's all about a letter, a love letter, and all these characters at the movie who think somebody else in the story wrote the love letter for them, and it's all this mix. People just thinking that somebody else wrote this love letter for them. A lot of people are just getting confused as to who likes them and whatnot, and all these characters end up getting together, only to find out this love letter was never written for them, and, okay, now that people are together, do they still love each other? And there's this love triangle at one point, and you end up finding out the love letter at the end was actually written by two old lesbians, none of them which is played by Ellen DeGeneres, who is in this movie. So, it was just okay. I was kind of getting bored with the story. At the end, I just kind of, all right, whatever. I didn't really care that I watched it. I just was not into this one. So a lot of you guys ask me, when I watch a bad movie, do I get rid of it? And yes, I'm not keeping this one. This one is going on my for sale and for trade list. I just really didn't care for it. Can't recommend it. Could have been an interesting story, but in the end, I just thought it was bland, wasn't very enjoyable, didn't really get behind the characters, didn't really care what was going on, and just thought the ending was just drab. So I cannot recommend The Love Letter. And the 10th and final title I watched this week was IndyFans, The Quest for Fortune and Glory. This is my second time watching this, and I've been actually really in the mood to watch this all week, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it. So decided to pop it in and check it out at the end of the week, and I love this. It's a great documentary all about Indiana Jones fans, and kind of, talks about everything from the movies to the props, talks about the rides at, the ride at Disneyland, and also the stunt show at Disney World, at the Disney Hollywood Studios. It talks just a lot about just Indiana Jones, and it's really, really fun to hear from the fans, and to also learn about kind of the process of not only the movies, but again, the stuff at the Disney parks, which I'm a huge Disney park fan. I can't get enough of the Disney parks, so I love learning about all of that. And they talk to some of the Imagineers who put the rides together. It's really fun to watch. So if you are an Indiana Jones fan, there's really no reason why you shouldn't own this one. This should be right next. This should be right beside your Indiana Jones box set. This is definitely one to pick up and check out. All Indy fans need to see this. So there you go, guys. It's everything I watched this week. Definitely watched some great movies like Clay Pigeons. Can't recommend it enough. That movie was fantastic. But I also watched some stinkers like My Soul to Take. That was horrible. Don't see that movie. But all in all, it was a great week of watching cinema. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned to see what I watch next week. See ya.